Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Thursday. It is March the 27th. It is episode number 53. That is 5-3. You're watching Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network. Jonathan Turner alongside my broadcast partner in crime, Mr. Nathan Wangler. And Nathan, man, it is a beautiful day here in Michigan and around the world.
That's a strong intro right there. BEA beautiful. I would stop shy of saying it's beautiful. I mean it's overcast and cold. So it is what it is. But yeah, it's another day and we're awake, that's for sure. Got a few people the other day hopping on our show. Actually got a few additional comments. That was cool. So got to chat with them a little bit. But yeah, no, it's a great day. Great day to have a day, as I always try to say. Great day to have a day. Great day to get after it. So let's get after it, shall we?
I think we should. I think we should definitely get after today. A lot we've been talking about this week about U.S. men's national team. We'll continue that conversation today, so why not? And I don't think that that's a conversation that should really ever go away. But we will continue to have a discussion about that. Coming up this weekend, a lot of games on the platform. We'll get into some discussion about our schedule this weekend. And we were just talking about this here a moment ago, off, in our green room, so to speak. And it's something that I think that regardless of whether or not you're a coach or whether you're a manager of a team or even in professional land, where you're talking about managing people, I think it's important, that we talk about what that's like in 2025. I remember growing up, Nathan, and my dad, I've been working since I was 12. I started off caddying. I hated it. I was supposed to, you weren't allowed at that time to caddy until you were 13. But my dad, with a little white out on the good old birth certificate, whited out, made me a little older so I could go be a caddy. I was 80 pounds nothing. I think most golf bags weighed way more than I could ever think of carrying. And I had to go out in there. I had to do a round, right? I had to do, carry a bag of clubs for a round of golf. I hated it. I hated every minute of it. And I love golf. I did. But I've been working since I was 12. And my dad instilled something in me that good things come to those who work hard and put themselves in a position to be lucky. Right. And that resonates in everything in life. It doesn't just resonate, or can be applied. It can be applied to anything. It can be applied to soccer, sports, career, family, doesn't matter. Right. If you work hard at something, good things will come out of it. It might not always turn into greatness or great things, but you are giving yourself a chance to be in a position to get something, right? You create your own luck if you work hard enough.
Yeah.
There are many people out there that I've met in my lifetime that did not have a single ounce of talent, but they outworked every single person that they came in contact with. And it created their own luck and created opportunities for them that led to success in many different ways.
All right.
I don't see that today. I don't see anything that's close to resembling that. I'll give you a perfect example. We just went and bought a whole bunch of new computers at a place called Micro Center. Okay. We spent a lot of money. I'm not going to tell you how much, but let's just say it's a lot. Okay. And a lot. Okay. I walk in there after just spending a lot of money. We walk in there and we're going to look for another computer. We're looking for computers for our staff here and additional equipment and whatnot. And walk up to a sales representative. And if you've ever been to Micro Center before, it's like walking into the old school art van, like where everyone like in a furniture store just kind of like just starts coming at you, right? You got 30 or car dealership, right? Everybody's waiting for you to come in and they like attack you. That's what it's like at Micro Center. Not on this day. So I walk up to a gentleman. I was like, hey, I need to get a computer. He's like, I'm going on my break. I'm like, oh, okay. And then he's like, oh, okay. Well, I'll take care of you. Well, I'm like, don't do me any favors. I mean, like, and they work off commission there. right? I'm
No.
like, I'm spend $4,000 or $5,000 in your place, like right now. I have no idea what that means to you guys in commission. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine
Mm-hmm.
it's significant,
Mm-hmm.
but that's how he was. And my dad and I, we were all having dinner last night. And my dad, we were talking about just work in general. And he made a comment. He goes, John, when you were growing up, I worked at Kroger at 13, from 13 or 14 to about 17. I worked at Kroger. I was a bagger. I worked in produce, and I was only there for a few months. And at any job, and you know this because you worked in kind of like the same kind of environment, right? So, recently, where you're maybe working at a deli counter, you're working something, and you have your breaks. You're here from for 8-hour shift. You get maybe 2
Mm-hmm.
15-half-hour lunch, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
so I worked in that same thing. So I would get my 2:15s, and I would get a half-hour lunch on a Saturday, and it was happened to be a Saturday. And I'm on my break. I clocked out. I'm walking towards the back to go my break, and a guest or customer stops me and says, "Hey, I need some help." And at that exact same moment, my dad and mom were like, I didn't know they were there. They were like behind me. They were walking, doing their own grocery shopping. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
this person, I said, I'm on my break right now. I said, and my dad looked at me. He looked at me and looked at this woman who asked me a question. And my dad goes to her and says, my son will help you even if he's on his break. That's exactly what he said to her. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm not on break anymore. So I went and helped this person out. But that one moment, it resonated with me for the rest of my life. Right. Because even though I was on my break, and yes, even though I wasn't, supposed to be helping that person, because again, I was in a union and all these things. I realized the importance of taking care of somebody, even if it meant that it made you uncomfortable or meant that you we're not going to get your free moment, right? And I just don't know if I don't see that anymore in our society, especially in customer service land. And I do believe it has a fundamental, down to its core, where we are right now with soccer in this country, with the U.S. men's national team. If we talk about how they are out there on the pitch, Nathan, how they're not performing at a high level and maybe they don't care, well, don't those two things go hand in hand? I mean, I feel like they do, but I could be totally wrong. I wanted to start our conversation this morning about that.
No, it's not the issue right now is the thing is, listening to I've had the chance in recent days to listen a lot to Landon Donovan and Tim Howard. They actually have their own podcast. I think it's really informative and unfiltered. Yeah, it's really it's a really good one to listen to, and they offer a lot of helpful insight. And the thing is, sometimes a lot of the things that they talk about aren't all that horribly unique, but they're all relatable. Especially when they talk about this U.S. men's national team. And they talked about the upcoming Gold Cup, and it's like, they kind of phrased it in a way of like, you have to go out and win that in order to prove yourself to anybody. But they also talked about when they were playing, like there's this overwhelming sense of pride. Number one, they didn't have the greatest, most talented group in the world. They didn't. I mean, when you look back at some of those teams, like some of them were fringe, players over in Europe. A lot of them were playing in the MLS. Like it's not like they were the biggest group of all-stars ever, but they played together a lot more. And the thing that they really cared about was they had just kind of this burning passion for U.S. men's soccer. Like that there was this common flame between all of them. Like they just wanted to go out and they wanted to dominate and they wanted to, really, really put on for their country. Now it's just, I think we've become so specialized in the sport of soccer, and a lot of it is, again, it's almost like clicky. You know what I mean? Like there's certain cliques in soccer, and everybody, depending on what club you play at, there's a lot of individual superstars, and these guys have reached a level of stardom at such a young age that, you start to take things for granted. And I think, the thing is when success marinades over a while, when it takes you years and years and years to finally get to a certain point, that, in a lot of ways can kind of generate a different sense of passion and wanting to go out and accomplish certain things. But when you're so young, the way a lot of these guys are, they just don't really grasp how important this is. And I think that the hardest thing for me is, when they don't grasp it, and you could tell that they don't care and the energy's not there and the play kind of reflects that. My big thing is who's going to get through to them how important this is, and exactly what Landon Donovan said in his quote the other day about, if you don't want to accept the invite to come out and play for the national team, if you're, so obsessed about, yourself and what club, you play at and this and that and the other thing, he's like, just don't accept it. And I thought that was interesting that he said that, because it's so completely true, because that's where we are. We have such a talented group of players, but do they really care all that much about coming out and playing for the U.S. men's national team? There was really only one that I said the other day that I saw that really put that on display, and that was Diego Luna. So I think we've, and coaches will say this, and I think it is partially true. We're into the me generation right now. Especially athletes coming up, it's all about me, my custom highlights, my social media, my attention, my deals, my teams. It's all about me. I do think I somewhat agree with that, but I also feel like you have to find the right coach in order to break that down and actually create something that's worth playing for and a team that's worth playing for. And so all of my issues with this, it is the generation of kids that's coming up. But in order to get someone out of that mindset, you have to break them down. And I was the same exact way when I got into my profession. I thought I had it figured out, and then I get in there and I realize, oh boy, there are people that are far better than me, far more prepared than me, know how to prepare better than me, sound better than me. And so I was broken down from very early into my career into understanding, like, in order to really get anywhere, you got to buy in. You have to buy into the process. You have to buy into working hard and being selfless and sacrificing a lot of different things in order to even sniff an opportunity to do this at a high level. And so that's, I think when you bring a bunch of talented young kids who are, individuals in their professional careers who probably don't play together all that much, and you put them all in the same room and you expect to put a good product out on the field, you have to have someone who's able to kind of emotionally break that down and get everyone on the same page and understanding exactly how much this means. That's the thing. I don't know if Mauricio Pochettino does that. I think, he's a great X's and O's. He might be a great X's and O's coach. He might understand the game really well. He might understand the technical aspects of it. But the hardest thing is, and it's the biggest thing that's lacking, is the emotional component of the game, and how do you go to a group of people? And again, like we said yesterday, when we were talking about the stats of them playing Panama and them playing Canada and Panama, there we go. How do you go to someone and point at those stat sheets and go, listen, this is how this game went, both of them, and you don't even show them the final score. You cover up the final score. You're like, what were the final score of these two games? I bet you 1-0 against Panama and 2-1 against Canada would not be their guess, but that's what it was. And so when you really break it down, and I said the other day, stats at the end of the day, they matter, but they only tell us one thing, and that's the story of the game. How did it go and how did it unfold? Well, how it unfolded was the U.S. was able to control possession and do a bunch of these other things. How it unfolded, though, was they only put one goal in a stretch of 180-plus minutes. So, again, the technical side we were good at, but, the emotional component, and that's the hardest thing for me, is that, pride and tradition and all that other stuff, like, it just doesn't, in this generation, I don't know if it means nearly as much. They grew up with a certain expectation. Good, Peter, what's up, man? Good morning, crew. Happy Don Drisdall, number 53 episode. There's not another 53 that might be in there. People now are cut from a different cloth. Sorry, I am late. I agree to an extent, but I think you have to have someone who's feared and respected who can actually create a team culture. I do think that is possible. But yeah, I mean, like, we grew up in the United States, and it's been said before, but, this might be, quote, the golden generation to some people, but I think to a lot of people, it's also the spoiled generation. And these guys are making more money and playing in more places and getting more attention on social media and all this other stuff than ever before. Landon Donovan, Tim Howard, they didn't have that. That Clint Dempsey. I mean, that they don't really care. But the tough part is when the only passionate person in the building is the man that's sitting at the broadcast booth and not anybody that's on the field or on the sidelines. That's a problem. That is a glaring issue. We've gone the direction of trying to be too cute. We've gone the direction of trying to be too specialized, and it's resulted in exactly what we saw in the Nations League final. So now we fix our sights on the Gold Cup, and that's again, those are the last competitive matches before the World Cup. So if you think about that, that's it. In terms of proving yourself, in terms of, they're going to be friendlies. There are going to be, some stuff that happens in between the Gold Cup and the World Cup. But that's your last opportunity to really show anybody or prove to anybody that this team is worth a damn. So I do think there is some level of that, JT. It just, I think, unfortunately, I don't think a lot of it is the kids' faults. I think that they're born and raised in a generation where, a lot of us can just kind of crawl into a hole and essentially shut ourselves off from society if we want to. And it's an easy thing to do. I could hop off this show right now and go on my phone and just crawl in a corner and be okay. But, I don't know what it is, but things have certainly changed. They're a little bit different, but I think it comes down to coaching too, and really setting a standard when you're talking about creating a team atmosphere.
Well, I remember Coach Campy at Oakland. Someone asked this question during a recent, I would say recent, but in the last year, a question about managing players in 2024, 2025, right? What's that like, right? And he made this statement that my non-negotiables have not changed, but the ones that are I've kind of adapted the non-negotiables, but they're non-negotiables, and I tell my players what those non-negotiables are, and that's what we adhere to, right? He's like, I'll give you an example. But back when we were started doing this, it was all about, okay, we told all the players, you have to all wear certain kind of shoe. I mean, it was colors, whatever. And then anybody's like, how would I go tell my players that they can wear only these shoes? But then, Kobe Bryant's out there, LeBron James is out there on the court, and they're all doing their own thing. He goes, so if they're allowed to do it, why can't my players? So what we decided is that we would let them decide the shoes, but like being on time, non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Right. Like those types of things. So he's just been like, there have been things that we've allowed, over the years we don't care as much about, right? The uniformity of a team wearing the same color shoes, and okay, let them be individuals as long as they understand that the non-negotiable, be on time, be a good team player. You're going to work your ass off while you're here, and that
give a damn.
Yeah. That has been like the quote unquote I guess I would not say the standard, right? Maybe the gold standard. When it comes to coaching, and I don't know, Nathan, I don't think you've ever actually coached, so I don't know if you have a perspective of this. Obviously, if you had, then you can chime in. From somebody that when you're talking about dealing with these different personalities, it's no different than being a parent, right? I have 3 children, and all 3 children, I have to handle them differently. I can't yell at one, because if I yell, it doesn't have an impact, right? Sometimes whispering is actually more beneficial and more impactful than screaming. But you have kids, so when you have these kids, you're gonna do different variations of that. But I can't treat them all the same. I can't punish them the same, right? And the same thing goes true for a player or players, right? Every player, again, as even Peter said, come from a different cloth. And then while that might be generational cloths, it's also a unique cloth, right? Every player is different, right? you've got 22 to 25 different personalities on your field, and not all those personalities mesh.
Right.
You're man. And to be fair, my message to players when they would come in is like, you don't have to like each other. I don't need you to like each other. Now, granted, the teams that like each other the most tend to be the most successful. Like, we
Mhm.
know that. If you ever ask teams about who will they win championships, I love playing with this team. I love
Mhm.
playing with this group of guys or this group of girls. You hear that.
Mhm.
So there's something to be said about that. But you don't have to like your teammate. Just like I say to my children, you don't have to like your brother. I mean, you have to love him. He's your brother and your sister. You have to, your siblings. And as much as I
Right.
want as a parent my kids to like each other and love each other, there's a significant difference between liking and loving.
Mhm.
And and respecting.
Right.
There's a difference there.
Right.
And when you're on the field, when you're in this locker room, when you're part of this team, whether you like somebody or not, we're all going to treat each other with respect.
Yeah.
Period. Right? That's a non-negotiable. I don't. Again, you're not going to pass the ball to someone because you don't like them. It's
Right.
not a thing. You know what I
Right.
mean? But it's a real thing, right? It's a real thing. How often do we
Mhm.
hear about it, right? Players aren't getting the ball. They're not getting passed to. They're not getting this. They're not getting that, right? People don't like that crap.
Mhm.
So, if I look at it from the standpoint of this, going back to what I said when we started the show, I was always taught that you're not dressing for the job you have, you dress for the job you want,
Mhm.
right? So, when you are out on the field, and you're a substitute, for example, do you think a player who is sixth on the depth chart or the sixth man, so to speak, in basketball, do you think that when they step on the court, they're not going to give more than the player who's maybe 4 or 5 on the on the roster, like the fourth, fifth? You don't think that 1, 2, 3 coming off the bench isn't going to give a little bit more? Isn't going to fight a little harder because they want to be in the 5,
Yeah.
right? They want to be the 5.
Right.
You're telling me the number 12, 13, 14 on a soccer roster, the depth chart's not going to give a little bit more than the player who's number 10, 9, 10, maybe even number 1, 2, or 3 on the roster. Those players have this thing that they want to go and they want to go out in that field and be a starter. Now, is that every player? Of course not, but there's something to be said about that. So the player who's a sub right now is trying to dress for the job of a starter, right? That's what they want. And
Yep.
there's not a player on earth that I have met who is competitive that does not want to be on the field. So, I want to be in the start. And to be fair, being a starter is a big deal. It's way more of a bigger deal than it really has to be. But in soccer, you're playing 90 minutes and you only have 5 subs. So you if you're not one of the starters, there's only a 5 chance opportunity to get in the game. So if you're 17
Mhm.
on the roster, you aren't getting in. Right.
Mhm.
So the reality is that you're dressing for that job. And where are you dressing for that job? You're dressing for it in training.
Mhm.
Right. And I don't
Yep.
know how many players are in training are going, man, I don't think that player should be starting. I should be starting. I'm better than that player. I
Mhm.
do better than that player when I'm on the field. Right. I'm sure you experienced that as a football player. Why
Yep.
is that player out there? I
Mhm.
should be out there. No, I mean, actually, me, Johnny, and Joe think that Dylan should be out there, not Michael. Like, that's a
Mhm.
conversation that takes place in every locker room in America at every level.
Mhm. Right.
But are they in fact, dressing for the job? I do believe that a lot of your substitutes are in fact doing that. And this is what we've been talking about with the U.S. men's national in the last few days is about if we're not going to see the hard work and the perseverance and this like grittiness and toughness and all the
Mhm.
words to describe what we would want to see on the field during a game from the existing players, we are going to find it in other areas. Is
Yeah.
it already there with these backup players who are on U.S. men's national team who are 17th on the roster? Is it a player who's currently sitting right now in Twin Rivers, Florida, getting ready to hop on a UPSL field? Is it, where is it? Where are they located?
Mm-hmm.
And can we get players who are dressing not for the current job, but for the job they want?
Yeah.
That's the player that we need on any roster the U.S. men's national team has. And to be fair, any roster the U.S. women's national team has forever. If you can find players who are not dressing for the current job, but dressing for the job they want, constantly had that mentality, we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Yeah. The problem is finding a group of kids that actually want the job of playing for the U.S. men's national team. Like I said about the women's side, they don't have any issues with that. On the men's side, it is a problem. Who actually wants to be out here? Are you taking this position for the clout? Are you taking this for personal reasons? Are you taking this as another notch on the resume? Or are you taking it with the understanding that, again, as we said on previous episodes, that the world is laughing at you? The world doesn't take you seriously if you play soccer in the United States. I'm sorry. I'm gonna put it right there. They don't take you seriously. Okay, so if you don't carry that mentality into this position, that's exactly where I kind of draw the line. And let's keep in mind, and I know that we've said that comparing this to soccer and to the game of soccer is like apples to oranges, but let's remember, everybody, like the greatest international victory in the history of this country was a group of amateurs that went out and did the job. And they were really good amateurs. They were really good from where they were from, in college and whatnot. But it was a group of dudes that otherwise, if it was allowed for professionals to be there, would not have been there. But since they were there, and since they did have the opportunity, and since they did realize the mountain that they were up against, it was almost like we have nothing to lose. We have nothing to lose. And that should be the mentality of this U.S. men's national team, because you do have nothing to lose. I mean, we want to talk about bottom of the barrel. I mean, yeah, 2018 felt like bottom of the barrel. That's great. But 2018 was 7 years ago. Like, we can't talk about what happened 7 years ago. Okay, now it's time to bounce back. We've had 7 years. Okay, we've had a World Cup. We've had all these other things in the interim. These guys, these young guys that we talked about, need to grow up. They're growing up. They're getting older. A lot of them are into their mid-20s now. There's no time. There's no more time for patience or let it marinate. No, like we have what we need at the very least to go out and be competitive. No one is saying we're going to win the World Cup, and I don't think there's even, unless they're a media member or an outlet that's trying to generate conversation and get people talking. Which in that instance, okay, I understand it. And there was even someone that commented on our videos that are like, well, you guys crowned them the golden generation. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, let's chill out with this you guys stuff. I'm like, I never said that. JT never said that. No one ever said that. He's like, well, the media. I'm like, okay, well then go talk to Alexi Lalas. Like, don't talk to me. Like, I never said that. I never believed that for a moment. But that's what people see. They see the media saying that stuff. And I'm sure the team probably holds on to that mentality. And then they go out and they lose those embarrassing games. There is nothing to lose if you're playing on the U.S. men's national team. Now we need them to reflect it by going out and playing like that. And you're right. I mean, would it be crazy to take, some of those kids that, amateurs, and put them out on the field? Would it be nuts? Yeah. I mean, does it get any worse than where we're at right now? No, because I think I would rather be on one side of the aisle or other. I'd rather be really bad or really good. But where we are right now is we are painfully in the middle. And that's because we have a lot of talented players that are all disjointed. They don't know how to play together, and then they go out and they get embarrassed by a team of guys who play together for a while, a long time, and have that synergy and have that camaraderie. So you're right. Yeah, it's about dressing for the job. It's about proving, with your work ethic and the way that you carry yourself. It's all of those things. It's all of those things. But I think it falls on the shoulders of the people making the decisions in order to figure out who is there. But the other thing is too, JT, and this is the part that is really hard, because I don't want to put this on anyone specifically, but when you grow up with everything kind of being handed to you, You know, the silver spoon platoon, if you will. The kids who were born into affluent or really good situations, and everything they wanted, from cleats to uniforms to clubs to anything they've ever wanted growing up, they've gotten it. You know, especially in the soccer world, we see that a lot because of how much money you have to spend in order to be in the best clubs in order to advance. That is in my mind the fundamental issue, because those are the types of people, unfortunately, that grow up thinking the world revolves around them, because that's all they've ever gotten in their life. They've gotten the best equipment, they've played for the best clubs, and so there's no real burning passion to really get out of, you know, the quote trenches. You know, they didn't grow up in the trenches. They don't know what it's like to fight for their life and to play for a reason other than the fact that they enjoy playing the game of soccer. It's not a survival thing. And that's where the whole soft mentality has come from, is that we've created this kind of like, this private club, if you will, this clique, this, that soccer is. And I know that baseball can tend to be that way too sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've talked to players before that are like, my friends would have loved to play. You know, we make a lot in the game of baseball about how, a lot of times the black community is not represented nearly as much as the Hispanic community and the white community. And the truth is that, I talked to one of our pitchers, Dylan Smith. He's from Alabama. It's just like, why don't we see more representation? He goes, well, it's a lot of them do want to play, but they just can't afford it. They can't afford how much bats are nowadays. I mean, they can't gloves and league dues, how much you have to pay to, especially these travel teams. I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah, you can play for your high school, but like, there's a pretty good chance, you're not really going to get noticed. Like, you might get like a D2 or a D3 type thing, but basketball is a lot more affordable. I mean, all you need is a ball and a hoop, and typically your local high school team has one. There's that element of this team that's kind of missing. And a lot of them are spoiled. A lot of them grew up affluent. A lot of them grew up in good positions. That's the part to me is like, I keep envisioning this kid that's playing in a park somewhere in Southern California that has better handles than most adults we've ever seen. I mean, he's just dangling full-grown adults, but, he's playing without shoes, or he's playing with the dollar store shoes that, the soles are worn out of them, on a dirt field somewhere in some backfield. That kid's never going to have a fighting chance of ever rising the ranks ever. He might play for his high school team. He might, and I know that they say, hey, the cream always rises to the top. If you're good enough, they'll find you. I'm not convinced in the game of soccer. And a lot of other games, you might have a point. And, in basketball and in football and heck, even a lot of these other sports, you might have, where the culture is healthy in the United States, you might have a point. That a lot of the greatest players, and even in the international soccer, we talked about this, like Messi came from poverty. Ronaldo came from poverty. Neymar came from poverty. All of them, because they had to play for their life. It wasn't a situation of, okay, well, this kid's talented. Now let's, I don't. That's the fundamental piece of all this that is missing, and I think it's the model itself. There's a reason why you talk about tearing it down. I think it's the model of the game itself in the United States that is generating soft players who are individuals who care about their individuality. What club am I playing for? Where's my career going? Playing for my country. Cool. You know what I mean? It's almost like kind of like a status thing that you get to wear the uniform. It's not a sense of pride of, I came from the trenches and now I'm, and now I'm playing on the international level and I'm ready to go out and prove to everyone that the United States is here. We've arrived and we're ready to go compete. That's the hardest thing, but that's not a simple plug and place. That's a taking a deep, hard look at the way that the game of soccer is structured in the United States and figuring out how do we find the real talent, and not just the talented ones, but the talented ones who are playing for a much different purpose than me. They almost, and that's the thing. If you want to generate a sense of urgency in someone, JT, take the money away from them. Put them in a bad spot. Make them starve. You really want to see what people are made of? Make them starve. Make them survive on very little. Put them in difficult situations. That's how you figure out exactly how much someone, quote, wants it. And the truth is I don't know if any one of those guys on that roster have ever had to, quote, starve in their life. They don't know what that feeling's like. And so that's where I don't know. There might be dots that are not connected, but that's the hard part to me. Is I do think there are kids out there who are willing to give it all and really risk it. I mean, almost willing to, and this might sound extreme, but die on the soccer pitch. And there are a lot of international players that I think would exactly track with that. I mean, look at some of the greatest players in the world. Is there a single player on the U.S. men's national team that we're like is willing to go out there and give it every single last bit of what they are in this game? No, I don't. I think they're going out to try and perform and maybe add a couple of highlights to their highlight reels and say, hey, look, I'm playing for the U.S. men's national team. But I don't see anybody out there that, like you talked about yesterday. When was the last time we've seen a post-game interview where a player is on the brink of passing out because they're so exhausted? I don't see it. Do we have a player that's willing to go out there and risk it all and actually literally die on the field in order to represent their country? We don't. Because there's just not that sense of there's so much individuality, and it's different in other sports. It really is. It really, really is. So that's where the tough part comes in for me, because I do think, we paint this whole, kids are like this nowadays. No, I mean, kids who come from good positions who don't realize how lucky they are do. But kids who are starving, kids who are in a position to literally do anything to prove themselves to somebody are oftentimes not, because they realize how important that is. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's the structure, JT. I think it's the way that the game is structured in the U.S.
On June 29th, 1950, the United States defeated England 1-0 in a World Cup match in Brazil. England was heavy favorites, and this was a team that was composed of part-time players back in 1950. Only USA won that game. It is considered one of the greatest upsets in the history of soccer, right? And made up of a bunch of part-time players. As a referee, and I don't know if it's changed. I know World Cup has changed for the referees. But when I was a referee growing up in, 18, 19 years old, being invited to go to U.S. Youth Regionals, right? I wasn't paid to go. I mean, my expenses were all paid. I didn't pay for anything while I was there, right? But I was told it was an honor to be selected and to be a part of that, right? So I wasn't paid for that. Again, I don't know if that's changed. Probably has. We live in a new world today. But the honor of being selected, because what that honor meant was that you had an opportunity to be seen by other referee assigners and assessors and evaluated, which can then in turn create an opportunity for you to go higher in the ranks. That was what that was all about. So I wasn't paid for those games. It was one of the most exciting and unbelievable opportunities of my life at the time. I learned so much about myself, not as an individual, but also as a referee. It was unbelievable. And there's something to be said about not paying, right? These are professionals, right? They all have agents. Most of them will have an agent, right? Someone that handles a public relations person, a team to help support them, to help them make their decisions. I would imagine on some level they're numb now to all of it, right? Because you have a whole bunch of people who are handling all this stuff for you. I'd imagine, assistants who manage their schedules and make sure they get to where they have to go, and they have drivers. I mean, it's not every player, but your superstars for sure, right? Have a buffer zone, right? Yep. And it does. It desensitizes you to what's happening. You know,
Yep.
it does. And you know, I do believe that that's a core thing. And if you were to say to all these players who are professionals, like, we're not going to pay you, like, we're not going to pay you to do this. It is an honor to be selected. Obviously, all your expenses, your flights, all that's covered. You know, if you get hurt, you have insurance, but we're not going to pay you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great idea. To be fair, I think it's the single greatest idea you've ever had. I'm not saying starve them, because you can't really starve them, but I mean, like, legitimately, you don't get paid to play on the team. It is an honor. You don't get paid.
Yep.
No, you'll get uniforms, you'll get all this stuff, you know, and hey, if we win the whole damn thing, there's a pot of money you can go your way. But aside from that, we don't pay you to play. It's an honor to be on the U.S. men's national soccer team. It's an honor.
And can you really put a price tag on how important it is to go out and at least prove to the world that soccer isn't a joke in the United States? What is there a price tag that can really be associated with that? In my mind, no. In my mind, no.
No, I don't know.
Especially at home here in the U.S. Yeah. Anyways,
but there's not a single player that I think, not a single. Here's the problem. Obviously, many years ago, U.S. women's national team and their players fought for equal pay, right? And you know, I think a lot of them came out in support of it. And you know, is it right to say that? Is it right to now say, like, you can't? We're not going to do this. You know, you're not going to get paid. And how would that impact the women's game? Right? Obviously, you don't want to mess with that. It might have to come down to it, like, you donate your pay now. You know, go donate it to a charity or something like that. Maybe that's the thing. I don't. Obviously, it'll never happen. I'm not going to say it will never, but I mean, the likelihood of us taking away pay from players because we want them to play for something more important, well, it ain't going to happen. What we've been talking about in regards to getting players to come to the national team, ready to play, gritty, tough, all the above, it's going to come from a player who has something to prove.
Yeah.
Right? Something to prove. That player, we need 50 of them. And they're there. We talked about, they're out there. I mean, and if you put that collective group of players together who are all there for the same reason, which is to get better and to go out there and win as a unit, miraculous things can happen. You can beat teams who you are expected to lose to. It can happen. Right. We've seen it time and time again. But for some reason, we want to get stuck on sexy. We get stuck on beauty. We get stuck on this thing that, to be fair, as much as it is immeasurable, it is immeasurable in its results. Right? You can't put a price tag on the intangible. But if you find the right player who has the intangibles that would lead your team to success, it is an unbelievable victory. And we just don't focus on that. We focus on, well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful soccer right there. That's beauty, right? That guy can pass the ball on a dime. That's a beautiful shot. That's 80 miles an hour rocket, right? This player can weave and deke and you know, dazzle and whatever you want to call it up and down the pitch. That's awesome. He plays for, you know, Chelsea. Let's get that player on our team. This player plays over the year as a backup for, you know, in the Bundesliga. Let's get this player. That's awesome. Why? It's not working. So it's not working. And if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. But the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. We are living in insanity land.
Mm-hmm.
And my biggest problem is not that these athletes are paid highly, not that they are the best. And to be fair, they might very well be the best players in the country. That might very well be the case.
Mm-hmm.
They're missing one fundamental attribute. One fundamental attribute. One. Just one. But to be fair, it is the most critical and crucial attribute that any player on earth could have. Work ethic. Right? And I'm not saying that they don't have work ethic. So please don't mistake that, because in order to get there, they had to have.
Yeah.
Okay. But work ethic and complacency, those two together, it kills everything. And right now, we have a bunch of players who have worked hard their entire lives, but now live in complacency land. Therefore, their work ethic has taken a dip. And what they do on the field is gone. And Peter's like in the movie Replacements, Gene Hackman said the players are missing heart. Heart.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can talk about the heart. I think they go hand in hand. I think that work ethic, it kind of fits into that, that same thing. And we can talk about heart, but work ethic, to be fair, is where I think it goes. But I agree with Peter.
And does it mean anything when you lose a game like that, or those two games? Are there guys yelling? Are there guys throwing stuff in the locker room? Are you getting into people's chests? I'm not in there. Because the only perspective that I can get in that situation is from the people who are on the broadcast team, who's the people who are around the team, who are around the players, and they all echo the same exact sentiment. No. Conclusively, no. They don't care. And if they do, they're not showing it. And if Captain America's in there and he's disappointed, he's not showing it. Okay, and I know you don't have to have. Listen, there's a big time difference between confidence and cockiness. You can carry yourself two different ways. It looks the same to a lot of outside eyes, but it's two very, very different ways of carrying yourself. When I talk about someone like Christian Pulisic, I'm not saying he has to be some sort of pretentious whatever. All I'm saying, all I want out of someone like him or someone in that locker room is to start getting up into people's chests, okay? Be an ass. I'm serious. Be an ass, because we don't have an ass right now on the U.S. men's national team. We don't have a dude that anyone's afraid of out there. All right, and the best way to are you guys following TST, the soccer tournament in Cary, North Carolina in June, I believe?
When you say following, I guess I would need I guess I would need maybe a little bit more than that, but go ahead.
But yes, so they need that. And the best way to gain a perspective on American soccer is to talk to those who are not from here but are playing here, whether that be collegiately, whether that be at the club level, and get their perspective on it. Because again, we've talked about the international perspective on American soccer, and I remember talking specifically. Are you raising your hand, JT? Oh no, you're.
I was just pointing out.
Sorry.
Coffee Firm is connected to Lansing Common, and Lansing Common's scarf is right there.
Ah, look at that.
Right. I just want to say right. The Robins, right there. Sorry, just want to make sure I point.
I told him I need to try that lemonade coffee. I don't believe it, but I don't believe it. But
I know your face yesterday showed it all, man.
I was judging too soon, I guess. I don't know, but his name is Thiago dos Santos. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Coffee Firm. Appreciate that. Yes. Dempsey used to be an ass. We used to have assholes, JT. And it's good. You need those, okay? Bill Laimbeer, there's a Detroit legend. Everybody outside of the Pistons hated him. Okay?
The Bash Brothers. Remember the Bash Brothers from Mighty Ducks? The Bash Brothers, right?
The Bash Brothers. But anyways, to wrap up this point, he talks about Thiago dos Santos. He's from Brazil, plays for Bethel. They've won national championships. Anyways, he talks about how, he's played at professional levels in Brazil. He's played, obviously grew up playing in that country. He goes, the competition level and the talent here in the United States is good, but he goes, the one thing that separates a lot of players here than separates them back home is the physicality. It's like everything we've said. He's like, they're forward, they're aggressive, they'll get into you. They'll knock you down and pick you back up and knock you down again. He goes, the level of competitiveness and talent in the game of soccer in the United States, even at the lower levels all the way up to the top. He goes, it's there. But obviously, we have not figured out a way to really translate that to the highest level, and that's the most frustrating component. And do we have a group of dogs that we see sometimes in the college game, that we see sometimes in USL or UPSL or MLS, maybe MLS next? Is that same group of dogs who might not have the same resume as guys, playing overseas or playing here or playing there? Sometimes that mentality difference can make all the difference in the world. And that's the hard thing, is like, we want to talk about, stats and who's good and who fits where and resumes. It only matters so much. It only matters to a certain point. And we've seen coaches in other leagues, we've seen coaches in other sports sometimes put groups of guys together that wouldn't necessarily be the first option on a pro roster, wouldn't necessarily be the first option on an international roster, but they put that group together, and because they have that component and they have it down packed, heart, synergy, realizing how much this matters to American fans, that's what's going to make the difference. But the truth is like, we can only come on here for so long and clamor about how much we have in the bag here in the United States before the rubber has to meet the road. And we can talk about the golden generation, we can talk about these young kids and everything else like that, but the patience has run out. Do we have a group that's ready to play together to go out and prove something? Again, this is something that I think we're missing. I think we're missing big time. And people are seeing what the potential is, but we can't put it together. And so that's, I'm almost kind of like waiting with bated breath for the next time we play, because, all of this is just, it's good conjecture. It's good talk, but I just want to see it. I want to see it happen. It's probably going to be the happiest day of my life if it ever does happen, especially on a big level. But there's a lot to figure out there.
That there is. As the coffee firm says, Noise scarf is, saw it yesterday. Thanks to Robbins. I'm curious, coffee firm, what you meant in regards to, are we following it? Obviously, we are going to follow anything related to soccer in this country. We talked U.S. men's national team, obviously, this week, and last week we talked U.S. Open Cup, which the next round is coming up here in literally next week. So the second round is April 1st and April 2nd. So we'll get into that here next week. Third round is the week of the 15th and the 16th of April. So we'll definitely get into those. We want to talk about all things soccer, obviously, on this platform, and we're still stuck on this U.S. men's national team. And to be fair, we should be. And I think the conversation about getting a new type of player is the right conversation. I believe that Pochettino, not the coach for us. Historically, it's proven to be the case. And maybe he can prove him wrong. Maybe he's the coach that just turns the tides. And we talked about it yesterday. It's never happened. A foreign-born head coach has never won a World Cup for another team. It's never happened in the history of the World Cup, ever. We talked about that yesterday. So I don't know who the hell makes these decisions, and I'm sure it's made, a lot of varying degrees of political shit. I just can't believe we're still here. I talked about this last summer. I said that I thought that we are still 20 to 30 years away from winning a World Cup. I think that we're 50 years away from winning a World Cup, 60 years away from winning a World Cup. Right? And again, I would love to be proven wrong. Would love it. I love it. So
I'm comfortable saying never if we don't change things.
Coffee goes,
Yeah,
well, we know what the TST is. I'm aware of TST. I've actually talked with the owners of TST. We've had numerous conversations. I've talked with them about us and our platform, what we're doing, and how we'd love to have a lot of what they're doing on our platforms. We've already had that conversation. I'm well aware of what TST is. It just, we will be creating a whole bunch of content related to TST as it comes underway here this summer. I wasn't sure when you said, "Are you following the tournament?" We'll follow it. I just didn't know what you meant. But anyways, yeah, I'm okay saying never too. I'm just a big proponent of being optimistic in general, and I do have optimism because if you can find the right team, the right mentality, the right coaching, the right mix of players and culture and philosophy and strategy, that can beat anything. We've
right.
seen it time and time again in sports. We talked about it here earlier. But right now, the biggest thing missing from the U.S. men's national team, as we talked about, is this desire for more, right? A desire for working harder, heart. They can all kind of be put into one shell called work ethic, like I talked about before. But that's the biggest thing missing from this team. And you better darn be embarrassed. You better be embarrassed if you're a U.S. men's national team player. You better be embarrassed. Because if you're not, man, get the F out. Get the hell out of there. Don't come back. You should be embarrassed. You should be embarrassed. Your team was not supposed to lose these games. They lost 2 games to inferior opponents who wanted it more than you did. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And
it's
they
understanding who you represent.
So leave.
It's understanding who you represent. Yeah.
Don't come back and play for this team if you don't understand that.
No.
You're playing. It's infuriating.
Yeah. You're playing for the next generation. You're playing for the kids who are coming up. You're playing for the kids who are deciding right now what they want to do, what sport they want to play, what they want to get involved in. Like you are doing it in order to make soccer not a laughing stock in the U.S. in comparison to the other major sports, in comparison to basketball and baseball and football and lacrosse and all these other things that's the game of soccer has to compete with in order to get more kids involved in the U.S. that oftentimes they don't have to do over in Europe. That your job isn't to represent yourself, right? That's the whole thing about the Herb Brooks. That's why I put it in the clip the other day. The name on the front means a hell of a lot more than the name on the back. Quote, get that through your damn head. That is the most important thing in all of this. When you put on that uniform, you're not representing you. You're not representing Christian Pulisic or Serginho Dest or, Gio Reyna or, you're not representing your name. You're representing the kids, the professionals, everybody who's involved in putting in just hours and hours and hours and days and years of work to try and grow this game in the United States. I think it's fair to say never, Peter. Give me a timeline. If we don't turn this thing around, if we don't figure out a way to restructure this whole thing and actually find not only a group of talented players, but a group of talented players who can go out and prove that they can hang with bigger teams because of the way they play together, I think never is perfectly fair. Someone's got to give me a timeline because I don't see it happening.
Well,
so
and the problem too about that, and this is before we wrap this show up today, the problem with this whole conversation is that while we are still trying to figure it out, a whole bunch of other countries already have. Right. Yeah. So while we're still trying to figure things out, the other teams are already there. And now for them, they're just reloading, right? They're just we're rebuilding, they're reloading. We're rebuilding, they're reloading. So every time we go through this process where we take 3 steps back, right? They're taking 2 steps forward. And so how can we ever catch up to that? It's not possible. So I think that's what Nathan is saying is like, hey, well, how give me an example of when we'll beat Brazil in a World Cup or Argentina, England, and again, I'm talking about it in a way in which we're winning the World Cup, right? Give me an example. We're beating these teams around the world consistently in the World Cup environment during qualifications that lead for us to be in semifinals, quarterfinals, and finals. We're in that conversation. I would love to know what your thoughts are on that. We're going to have that conversation, though, on Monday. So, but that is a wrap here on number 53. We will not be here tomorrow. Tomorrow I will be unavailable. But that's okay. And we'll take a break, come back on Monday. It's next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I will be on a plane during the show on Thursday. And on Friday, maybe I'll do a show. It just means I got to do it like 6 o'clock in the morning from my hotel room in San Diego. So we'll let you know about that. But either way, I'll have to ask my best friend. He'll be in the room with me. So maybe he doesn't want me doing podcasts with him while he's sleeping. But either way, we are excited to continue to have you joining us for these shows. Don't forget, subscribe, like us, and share us. Head over to thenationalsoccernetwork.com to get all your soccer news nationwide here. And again, alongside Nathan Wangler, I'm Jonathan Turner. It's been a beautiful Thursday here on Inside the Game. And don't forget, come back here every single day, Monday through Friday, unless I'm busy, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., right here on the National Soccer Network. This has been a presentation of the National Soccer Network.